Hello, my name is Matt Green. I'm the head of school at Falmouth Academy. Thank you for joining us today. Here at Falmouth Academy, embedded within our mission is a commitment to engaging the challenges of our times. And our students have identified one such challenge as the breakdown in constructive and civic political discourse. To that end, they have invited State Senators Julian Cyr and Susan Moran to engage them in a conversation on this topic. And here to kick off the event and introduce our guests is Senior Ellie Thomas. Ellie?
Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and Senator Susan Moran for Plymouth and Barnstable District. Senator Cyr is now serving his second term in the Massachusetts State Senate. He is the Senate Assistant Majority Whip, Chair of the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery, and serves on committees with oversight of healthcare policy, public health, regional government, and education. Senator Cyr has experience in public policy, health advocacy, and organizing social justice. Senator Moran served as a selectwoman here in Falmouth and is now running for re-election for the Massachusetts State Senate. She is a supporter of the ROE Act and sponsor of an act requiring one fair wage. She has experience in elected government, having served as chair of the Falmouth Select Board and other Cape-wide committees, and she understands the socioeconomic, environmental, and healthcare challenges we face on Cape Cod. Thank you both so much for taking out part of your day to speak with the Falmouth Academy community. We have some questions here for the forum, so whenever students are ready.
Hi, I'm Mia, a junior at FA this year. My first question for you both is, what inspired you to enter public service?
Senator Cyr has seniority, so I
No, I was going to say Senator Moran represents Falmouth proper. So Senator Moran, this is your show, my friend, because we're in your town.
Wow, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just gives you an example of the support that we have between us and in the entire legislative group for the Cape and Islands. So the reason that I got involved in higher elected office was just to further all of the initiatives that I started as a selectman and as a Barnstable County delegate member for the community. When you look at civil discourse, I'll tell you that I was brought up, with this sort of, if you see something, say something kind of family. My uncle was a public defender. My dad was in a wheelchair most of my life and spent all of his free time helping the local community as well as veterans. And so I just grew up in a family that, really focused on how important it is to participate in your community, how important it is to help other people, and how important it is to really have an oar in the water and to be the one that says, let me help you with that, to be the one that volunteers. So that was my start. Senator Cyr?
Sure. So I'm someone who didn't really kind of conceive that I'd run for political office or sort of come out to myself that I wanted to run for political office till maybe about 2 years before I actually ran in 2016. And I was really motivated to run for office. I think primarily I look at the challenges we face as a region, here on Cape Cod and on the islands. This is a place that's becoming profoundly unaffordable. It's harder and harder for people to make a life here. I look at my parents' generation and what they were able to do and able to, whether they were born here on Cape Cod or were able to wash ashore, build lives and families, and it's a lot harder to do that now. And really, I think if Cape Codders of my generation and Cape Codders of your generation don't step up and don't lead and aren't invested in this place, then I don't know what kind of a future this place is going to have. And that's particularly true when you come to the extremities of the region, when you come to my neck of the woods in the Outer Cape or on the islands. And so, I think really that was my sort of really main impetus and motivation to run. Yes, to run for office, you've got to have a healthy ego and certainly some ambition, but I've really found that that's really that fuel is sort of insufficient to get you all the way. Running for office is really difficult, and I think that those sort of deeper motivations. I'd also add, as someone who's queer, the LGBTQ liberation movement certainly is an inspiration, and something that I feel, as someone who has had so much privilege as an out person, that I've got some responsibility to give back to.
My name is Sarah. I'm also a junior, and my question is for Senator Sear. Working as the chair for the Massachusetts Commission on LGBTQ+ youth, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced politically?
So I think first was, it's a great question. Thank you, Sarah. And so I don't know if everyone knows what this commission is. So Massachusetts, since the early 90s, has had a commission focused on the needs of LGBTQ youth. First, it was a governor's commission, then a guy named Mitt Romney was our governor in the mid-2000s and tried to disband the commission. So the legislature created it as an independent commission. And the LGBT Youth Commission has authority to basically make sure that we're shining a light on the needs of LGBTQ youth in Massachusetts. So I served on that commission for 6 years, and several years into it, actually ran for chair. One of the biggest challenges actually was around a leadership transition. So there was a longtime individual who had led the commission for a number of years, someone who was an educator, very, very dedicated, but certainly not youthful. And at the time, I was quite youthful. I think I was like 24 or 25, maybe 26. And so a challenge was, first of all, kind of convincing members of the commission that we needed to have a leadership change, and that leadership from younger people, not entirely youth, but close to youth, was really essential. So that was sort of the first big hurdle. I think the second big hurdle is how do you build a team to do what's essentially work on a volunteer basis, right? So being a member of this commission, or if you're a member of the select board or the planning board, or many of these local offices or even statewide offices, these are volunteer positions. So wrangling people and getting members of the commission to do work and to produce an outcome that was robust was also a challenge. But ageism, I think, throughout, in an organization that's dedicated to lifting up the needs of LGBTQ young people, ageism was probably the biggest hurdle for me.
Thank you, Senator Sear. Senator Moran, I have a question for you. What social justice issues have you been focusing your attention towards recently?
Wow, that is the question of the hour and of my race. I won in a special election. I'm running very quickly again. And just in that short amount of time, a couple of really foundationally important issues have really come up to an even more pivotal point. The first one is the Roe Act. When in the 70s, the court case that passed the Roe Act, and 30 years later, no young women, myself, it's really sort of surprising that we're still talking about women's rights to be in charge of their own bodies, basic women's health care. And right now, it's under attack. There was, in my generation, it was sort of a very big, sort of movement just to really stand up. It leads to important things like equal pay, being able to, raise a family and also work and have the proper benefits. And at this point in time, we're sort of passing the mantle to your generation. I mean, it's really amazing that this is still an issue. Whenever, I'm debated in this race, I'm almost embarrassed to say this is something we still have to fight for every single day, to keep the government out of a discussion between a woman and her doctor. So that's one of the most important issues. The second one I would say is reform, shift, build. The police bill that's come up in the Senate and the House, that's been related to all of the kind of Black Lives Matter incidents of late. Those are the things that we're focusing on supporting in the Senate. The Senate bill was overwhelmingly put forth to really just kind of look at the policing, get sort of regulations and training up to the level that the police chiefs and that most officers have really wanted for a long time. And then looking at the social service aspect, all of the problems that police have dealt with, all of our social issues have really been laid at the feet of police officers. And we're really looking at focusing on putting the social service aspect of the job, shore it up, and really have a better system for everyone. So those are the crucial things I'm looking for your help with.
Thank you. My second question for you both is, how do you think the definition of conservative and liberal have changed over time in accordance with the two political parties and all political parties?
Sure, Derwin. That sounds like a long research paper, right? What is sort of considered traditionally liberal and traditionally conservative, I think does sort of shift, and where priorities are in the parties have shifted. So actually, a really good example is on the issue of civil rights and racial justice. The Republican Party was founded in many ways as a anti-slavery party. And the outcome of that election in the 1860 election, of course, the election of Abraham Lincoln, and then the subsequent Civil War, the party of Lincoln was seen as the party of more receptive to what we would call racial justice today. I think what then would be called civil, and that also sort of shifted, particularly in the civil rights movement, and a real shift that we saw, 100 years later in the 1960s, with the passing of the Voting Rights Act, of the concept, of really seeing the Democratic Party as the party of civil rights. So liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, the sort of meaning of the parties over the sort of lifespan of the parties, particularly when we talk about parties that go back, 100 years. The Democratic Party, right? We used to have sort of an annual get together called the Jefferson-Jackson dinner, and we don't call it the Jefferson-Jackson dinner anymore, right? Acknowledging that both President Jefferson and President Jackson were enslavers, and were, particularly in the case of Jackson, had a pretty problematic role in sort of furthering the genocide against indigenous peoples in this country. So yeah, I mean, there's some good books I could pull out on my bookshelf about, a more classical interpretation of conservative, a more classic interpretation of liberal. But I think, in this moment, I think we have to take the parties for sort of where they are from a policy position.
From my perspective, there's been such a polarization over particularly the last 4 years or so. I think that there's sort of a core of folks in the middle who just feel completely disenfranchised, where they're struggling, maybe economically, maybe health issues, maybe addiction issues. And, there's been this sort of, argument about fitting in the conservative box or fitting in the liberal box. And I think this really is, it's a very volatile time in our country where folks are questioning where, if I don't fit in one box or the other, where do I fit? And the thing that concerns me most is the sort of divisiveness that creates. Particularly, we see it lately with the police bill, where there's a thought that you can't be proud of law enforcement and work well with law enforcement, as I have, and as I know Senator Sear has, and also want to have better services and better support for those officers. The fact that you can't be for some reform and also back the blue. And, I think that it's come down to and been really destructive for the health issue of the pandemic. I mean, the fact that it's, mask wearing has been politicized. It has really been the most impactful consequence of this us or them, religious or not religious, or, whether seminal issues like women's health rights and that sort of thing. I think that, the best thing for our nation and for our community is to really think more about, sort of listening to the other side and try to gain that perspective than drawing lines. I mean, you look at simple issue, Route 28, the bike path. We're trying to move this in Falmouth. We want to be able to have a better road and perhaps have safe biking. Well, those aren't necessarily incongruous things. And so, as chair, I created a committee that had every opportunity to interview state experts and town experts and engineers and say, why do we have to cut down this tree? Can we do a half circle around it? And, with that conversation and that outreach, there was agreement. Sure, that tree can be saved. So those are the kind of conversations we have to continue.
Hello, Senator Sear, Senator Moran. My name is Alice. I'm a senior at Falmouth Academy. Senator Moran, you have provided a great segue to my question. My question is to you both. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has become a very partisan issue with regards to testing, school, business reopening, and mask wearing. How would you describe the discourse around this particular issue at the State House?
I actually don't think that COVID-19 is seen as a partisan issue when we talk about Massachusetts Republicans and Massachusetts Democrats. So we have supermajorities of Democrats in both legislatures, but we have a Republican governor, and actually the three bodies sort of work quite well together. And when there's acrimony, often it can be between the House and the Senate, not with the governor. So in a Massachusetts context, I think COVID-19 has been less politicized than elsewhere. But if you do look at polling around people's response, I think Senator Moran raised the issue of mask wearing just a moment ago. Really disturbing and a real consequence of the deeply problematic and the demagoguery that we see coming out of the federal administration. Has had real consequences for people's health. So I think it's less so here in Massachusetts and New England for a whole host of regional and cultural factors. I think we've seen broader compliance. And I think we've done better in the pandemic, particularly after that initial surge we saw from March and April into early May. We've actually done better from a case perspective. And I think part of that is because that just following the common sense public health guidelines that we all know has really made a difference here and isn't seen in maybe as much of a partisan lens as it is seen in elsewhere in the country. And it just really shows how dangerous, particularly this administration has been with the lives of Americans. I think that the reason for that, I don't know if everyone here knows that Senator Sear had led and is leading the CAPE sort of reopening task force, and which I've participated in. And what, in my view, there, for example, the Polar ice cream incident, where we have these little crop ups of places where folks go and there's some disagreement about mask wearing and service and that kind of thing. And what was done with the task force is sort of twofold, really just putting factual information out for the community, and secondarily, if there were concerns, really just kind of addressing, differences of opinion, health information, what kind of sort of broad rules needed to be imposed based upon the data of outbreaks. So
I would say within the Senate, there, in my view, it's a pretty, collegial body, really all hardworking, really interested, very smart people just wanting to do the best for the community. And I think the most important thing is just really, trying to understand why there might be a difference of opinion and really work and opening of schools, for example, have a really practical approach based upon particular data in particular areas. So that's, I think that piece of it has actually worked well.
Social issues can have a political and divisive undertone, such as if you support Medicare for all, you are associated with the left. If you support the Me Too movement, then you are a radical feminist. What can we do to move past political labels and dive into an issue deeply?
Everyone, we look at, Google or we've got all these social media opportunities and, Facebook even. I know you're sort of kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt, but those sorts of soundbitey conversations, I think can, just the way when you remember texting somebody in my staff, and the caps key got locked and I was in a rush and I sent the message and he wrote back to me, "Why are you yelling?" There are these, based upon the media, there can really be a disconnect from person to person communication. And we see that with all the Zooms that we're doing where, my favorite part is, when I'm in a meeting and my dog jumps up or someone else's, kid cries, or there's just to really put that human context into issues is so difficult, especially with the stress and strain of COVID and people not being as free to relax and engage as they normally were. I think that the thing to pay attention to right now is to sort of give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Let's be a little kinder. Let's try not to be as reactive. Let's try to put ourselves in the other person's position. And I think that, if we try to avoid really jumping to those conclusions, I think the discourse the temperature will be a little lower. We'll be able to find more common ground. So that's my thought about where we are right now.
I'd add, I think that's a good answer. I'd add, I look at the issues that Senator Moran and I and all the members of the Cape Anns delegation work on. And so much of the work that we actually do for the people that we represent, these aren't partisan issues. About 8 out of 10, or almost 9 out of 10 of the issues that I'm dealing with, my staff's dealing with on a daily basis, it's not partisan stuff. It's helping people navigate through something through the state or through a bureaucracy. It's looking at big regional challenges like wastewater, like housing, looking at stewardship of our environment. And so it just doesn't, when you actually look at these real issues, it just doesn't neatly cut along sort of partisan lines. And I really try to work, collaboratively with all my colleagues, but there's 8 of us who represent the region, Democrats and Republicans, alike. Do we agree on everything? No. I mean, there's actually some disagreement, not that I actually have with Senator Moran, but there's disagreements that Senator Moran and I have with our own Democratic, colleagues. And so I try to really keep focused on the work, and where there's opportunities to work on these sort of bipartisan issues or sort of nonpartisan issues. That's where I definitely try to focus. And then on certain issues, there's certain issues that are of core values. And really, what I think gives me a lot of hope is if you look at certainly your generation, if you look at my generation, if you look at millennials and Generation Z, look at polling around what are considered some of these, hot button issues. These are resolved, right? Whether it's reproductive justice, racial justice, financial equity, all these things, when you actually look at our generations, are not hot button issues. And so, part of that is how do we sort of build that consensus, and how do we also get more politically engaged? If your generation voted and my generation voted, we'd be running the show, right? And then you'd have actually a lot more consensus on some of these issues that are seen as, quote, sort of hot button, when the reality is they're not as there's not as much division, I tend to think, among the general populace as is maybe reflected in our politics.
These are fantastic responses, and it's just so informative. I was just noting the time a moment ago and wondered if you had time for just one more question.
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. Fantastic, thank you.
Internet platforms like Twitter and Facebook can simplify political issues into trends and one-liners. For example, justice for Breonna Taylor. How do we raise awareness about certain issues while capturing the nuance behind such political topics?
Well, I think we sort of touched on this. The most, I think, important thing is to really be generous with your, with your listening, and to really be, those social arenas. There just are a lot of folks who are entertained by sort of bomb throwing, right? And just, sometimes that discussion, can be interesting, and sometimes it's good to really kick the tires and really, shake things up a little bit. But I think you really have to learn how to do that, and we all do, in a way that's, that's not unkind and that's not attacking. There, and I think the only, the safe and comfortable way that we can do that is through social mores. And it's really about, kind of, for want of a better word, really policing each other, and just really, always looking at that productivity piece of it, where you want to get something out of it. I mean, the best thing, in school, and Falmouth Academy does this terrifically, is when you really have a boisterous debate, you get a lot out of it. You really, something might touch your heart, your soul, something might put you on fire. Those are the best ways to understand and to really learn something, and it sinks into your head and your heart. But we've got it on a social media platform. We just have to really adjust and sort of be aware of that, the limitations of having discussions there.
I think several pieces here. One, I think we clearly need to have some sort of common rules of the road when it comes to social media. I think there's clearly some antitrust issues at play, and other pieces that I'm hoping a new federal administration a new Congress is gonna take on, because there is real disinformation that's deeply dangerous. And if we look at the conversation we had earlier around mask wearing and compliance and public health information, really shows how increasingly vulnerable in this world we are to sort of misinformation and disinformation. I think we all have an obligation to really learn how do we navigate this information, right? There'll always be free speech allows always a whole host of good, bad, and ugly, and otherwise an indifferent information out in the world. But I do think when it comes to social media in particular, there's a real level of accountability that needs to be taken, and I hope it's looked at. I do think, though, that slogans have real value and power, and so I don't think sometimes a hashtag or a tweet actually has a tremendous amount of power, and so I don't think we want to lose sight of that either. That slogans can be galvanizing and inspiring, and can create shared meaning among movements and among allies, and so there's real power in that. So I think that needs to be balanced. Frankly, I kind of think your generation has already sort of figured some of this stuff out. Y'all are by and large not on Facebook. You're probably not even on Instagram all too much. That's sort of my dinosaur generation, and using newer platforms. And so I think that part of this may also be cured just by people getting sort of sick of the more tired social media platforms. But I think some good accountability is going to be needed as well.
Yeah.
I must say, I agree with you on the accountability of social media for sure. We could all benefit from that. I just wanted to, before we close, I'm going to turn it back over to Ellie for our closing. You have here a room full of passionate students who are eager to engage in the work of social justice. And the makeup is our GSA group, our Students of Color group, and our encompassing Students of Social Justice group. Do you have any closing thoughts of advice or wisdom that you would like to just pass along to these students as they're engaging in their own work?
The one thing that I would say is to really continue to engage. Take your energy and your studies and your awareness and bring others into it. You're all leaders. I think there should be more opportunities created for participation in local government. I think that you're sort of leading by example, just as you are today in doing this forum and coming up with these questions and engaging the state government is absolutely crucial, because it's your energy and optimism and your viewpoint that is missing in some avenues right now, and it's very important, very needed. And the first step, you're already here, you're already experts, and you're already putting a lot of energy into it. So thank you for that, and thanks to your teachers and administrators who support that as well.
So when I first ran for office, some of the best advice I got was from Deval Patrick, who was the governor of the Commonwealth for 8 years, African-American man, pretty remarkable guy, a mentor to me. And, when I was running at the time, I'm not, a 30-year-old openly LGBTQ person is probably, from the smallest town of Cape Cod, is probably not supposed to be the state senator for the region. Probably should be someone out of, Hyannis or the Mid-Cape. So I was asking for advice about, considering whether or not I would run. And he gave me some of the best advice that I've kept to this day. And his advice was, don't be afraid to lose. Don't run like you're afraid to lose, meaning, don't be afraid not only to put yourself out there, but don't don't tell voters or tell people what you think they want to hear. Have a real motivation, in and of yourself, to run or to serve or whatever you're going to do. And I think that really stuck with me. And I think particularly, we got a room full of, kids of color, queer youth, allies, people who are deeply committed to, justice and want to see sort of change in the world. And I would really say, don't be afraid to lose. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to fail. And I think that will, that'll really serve you well, kind of get that. I'm sure many of you have, as Senator Moran and I both do, a bit of that imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're not worthy enough, you're not good enough, someone else would be better. Try to sort of, honor that and give that some space, but don't be afraid, I think, to lose, and don't run like you're afraid to lose. And then I also think it's really crucial to take care of your mental health. This is, high school is always a challenging, difficult time, but these days are even more anxious and uncertain. And really taking care of your mental health, and even in my own experience, tending to my mental health has been very essential and helpful in allowing me to, frankly, do things I never dreamed I could do, which includes having this job. So thank you so much for having the two of us keep up this work. We need your generation now more than ever. If you are able to vote and registered to vote, make sure you make a plan to vote and get your family members to make a plan to vote too.
Thank you, Senator Sear and Senator Moran, for spending your time with us today. Today has been a fantastic learning opportunity for the students of Falmouth Academy, and we thank you for encouraging young minds to follow and learn more about politics, both on local and federal level. Civil and truthful political discourse is critically needed now to wade through all the noise and misinformation to create public space where differences of opinion can be expressed respectfully, while still working together toward a consensus. We need our leaders to model this for us, for the good of the country. So once again, Senators, thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we hope to have you back in person another day.
And I'm right up the street, so come see me.
Excellent.
Toronto's a little farther, but yeah.
We'll wear our masks. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Take care,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Bye for now.